What's up, guys? It's your Money Cat. We are almost coming up on 1 year mark since the pandemic has started. So in this video, we're going to take a look at two sectors that I think could be the very last recovery play. And I quote recovery because most of the stocks have recovered and gone beyond. So it seems a little funny to still talk about recovery play when it's been almost a year and most stocks have gone way higher than pre-pandemic levels. Before we go on, I ask you please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you are always reminded when Money Cat is here. Let's take a look at this graph. It represents number of cases in the United States. On January 8th, that was kind of the peak. We hit 7-day average of 260,000 new cases per day. That was the peak. And since then, thanks to perhaps better masking, definitely vaccination, we cut it down by almost 3/4 of the way. So we are now at nearly 67,000 new cases per day. That's the 7-day average. And that is remarkable. We still got some ways to go, but this decrease is just amazing. It's really, really good to see. Now, on top of that, let's take a look at the TSA checkpoint travel numbers. This is number of people going through the airport, or the TSA at least. Let's begin early December of 2020. We were averaging probably somewhere between 600,000 to 700,000 travelers per day. And it started to pick up where we are consistently hitting a near or over 1 million per day, especially as we got closer to Christmas, New Year's, the holiday season, when people are traveling more to see their families. Then we reached early January, where I pointed out the peak on January 8th. The number starts to drop significantly. It drops all the way to 500,000, which is pretty much cut in half compared to what we were averaging during holiday season. And if you look at the data from the year before or 2 years before, sure, there's some drop off. Like we were averaging around over 2 million around the Christmas and New Year's, and we go down to a little bit less than 2 million. But the drop off here is much more significant than here, likely affected by the peak levels of the new cases. The numbers stagnated a little bit, but eventually the cases started dropping and more vaccinations were happening. And in February, the numbers start to increase again. And around February 11th, 12th, we got over the 1 million mark again. And so we are kind of hovering around, I say, anywhere from 900,000 to a little over 1 million right now. If you compare this to the year before and 2 years before, we are not even at 50% capacity in terms of number of people traveling. So I can only imagine that this number will continue to increase as the number of new cases decrease and more vaccinations happen. So this could be a boost for the airlines. I'm looking at around 6 months time horizon or so, lining up with when the summer comes. I think people will have a great pent-up urge for traveling vacations that are bigger, longer, and hopefully by that time, the pandemic will have subsided even more, and I think there could be an explosion of traveling and vacationing. So that's why we're talking about the airlines and the cruise lines. So let's go through a couple of these stocks, couple of these companies, and take a look at their chart. So this is a 3-year chart for American Airlines, stock symbol AAL. If we assume that it can at least close this gap right here, then that leaves us with about little over 30% potential gain. The bad thing about American Airlines is even before the pandemic hit, it was in decline. So since hitting $57 all-time high, it basically has been going down, and this when the pandemic hit, that was just the last nail in the coffin. It dropped all the way to $8.25. AAL has been repeating this pattern of increasing greatly, then dipping, and then increasing, then dipping. But even in that process, it has been making higher lows even with every dip. And it's kind of like almost like triple cup and handle, where the bottom is getting higher and higher, and eventually we could see a break above this resistance line right here. We're actually really close to it, so potentially it could go. Let's look at Delta Airline next, stock symbol DAL. Delta has been doing much better than American Airlines. You can see that it has been already in a uptrend right now. So if we imagine that this closes this gap as well, pre-pandemic, we can assume about 17-18% gain. So definitely not as much as American Airlines, but that's because it's already in an uptrend. And whether you take that as Delta being a better company fundamentally, or if you look at it as, oh, that's not as much gain as American Airline, that's just, it depends on your aggressiveness. Next, we have United Airlines, stock symbol UAL. This is more similar to American Airlines. You got the triple cup and handle going on here at that resistance, about to maybe break to the upside or get rejected again. And just like AAL, with every dip, it has been making higher lows, which is a good sign. So for this stock, if we take a look at where we are right now at around 50, and we assume that it goes back to pre-pandemic level, closing the gap, that is about 60% gain. So gain-wise, United Airlines is probably the most enticing if we just strictly look at potential gain compared to pre-pandemic levels. Obviously, there are other airline companies like Southwest, Alaska Airlines, to name a few, but most of these other airlines have already returned to previous pre-pandemic level. For example, this is Southwest, and you can see that current price is pretty much right at where pre-pandemic level was. This doesn't mean that these companies won't see any boost from continued decrease in pandemic, more people traveling and vacationing, but at least comparing pre-pandemic to now, these have already caught up. Even so, many other stocks have jumped beyond pre-pandemic levels. So, any good news about traveling, vacationing, I imagine these stocks could go up even higher. We're going to look at two cruise lines, Carnival and Royal. If you can think back to what American Airlines looked like, the chart looks very, very similar. So you have this resistance here, which we're close to it right now. And it has been making this kind of triple cup and handle pattern. And again, each time putting in higher lows after each dip. So same thing applies to this stock. If we imagine it going back to about pre-pandemic level, let's choose that gap, 76%. If we choose this gap, that's a little over 50%. Lastly, let's look at Royal. Similar chart, but looks a little bit more uptrendish compared to Carnival Cruise Line. You can actually draw some channel here, uptrend channel. If we redraw it as channel, something like this, if we exclude this peak right here, then it's definitely more of a uptrend compared to the other one, the Carnival Cruise Line. So maybe that's a better thing for you, or maybe that just means less potential gain. Again, depends on how aggressive you are as a trader or investor. So for this stock, if we imagine that it closes the gap, goes back to pre-pandemic level, it's going to be about 40% with the top gap here. If we just close to that gap, that's about a little less than 20%. Although looking at the direction of the trend, I would imagine that it actually goes all the way to the top side of pre-pandemic level, which will put us at about 40% potential gain. Notice we didn't really cover anything about the fundamentals of the companies or really anything else besides the idea of a pandemic continuing to subside, people's desire to vacation and travel being pent up even more, and especially come summertime when the restrictions possibly lift and people can travel to not only domestically but to other not other companies, to other countries freely, then these types of stocks could see a huge boost, finally catching back up to the pre-pandemic level and even possibly going up beyond that level. We didn't pay any attention to this company value or fundamentals because it's a swing trade. It's meant to be swing trade, targeting this idea as well as kind of lining up with the summertime where most people take vacations. So if you can wait that long for a swing trade and kind of see this idea as well, I think this could be a fun trade idea.